The rain hammered against the shingles like nature's own percussion section, and here I was, balanced on a ladder at midnight, trying to patch holes that seemed to multiply faster than I could fix them. My name is Jake Morrison, and I've spent 15 years fixing other people's problems, plumbing, roofing, electrical work, while my own life slowly crumbled around me. "Jake!" The voice cut through the storm from below. "Get down here right now." I sighed, water dripping from my baseball cap. My wife Amanda stood in the doorway, her silhouette framed by the warm kitchen light. Even soaked and exhausted, I could see the tension radiating from her posture. Something was wrong. More wrong than usual. I climbed down carefully, my boots squelching in the muddy yard. "What's the emergency? House isn't on fire, is it?" "Don't be smart with me." Amanda's voice carried that edge I'd been hearing more often lately. "We need to talk." Inside, I kicked off my boots and grabbed a towel from the laundry basket. Our house was a fixer-upper that I'd been fixing for a decade, always one project away from being perfect, according to Amanda. Tonight, it felt more like a prison. "I'm tired of this," she said, gesturing at everything around us. "Tired of living like we're broke college students." "We're not broke," I said, drying my hair. "We're just not rich." Everyone at the firm is moving up, buying nice houses, taking vacations, and here I am, married to a handyman who thinks patching a roof in a thunderstorm is normal behavior. I looked at her, really looked. When had she started caring so much about what other people thought? When had I become an embarrassment instead of a partner? "I work hard," I said quietly. "Everything I do is for us." "For us?" She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "When was the last time we went anywhere nice? When did we last have dinner that didn't come from a box?" I wanted to remind her about the vacation fund I'd been building, the romantic dinners I'd suggested that she'd turned down because she was too busy with work. But something in her eyes stopped me. This wasn't really about money or vacations. "There's someone else," I said, not a question. Amanda's face went pale, then flushed red. "Don't be ridiculous." "I'm not stupid, Amanda. The late nights, the new clothes, the way you flinch when I touch you." I sat down heavily at our kitchen table, suddenly feeling every one of my 38 years. "Who is he?" "Jake, Just tell me." Before we deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. Outside, the storm continued its assault on our little house. Finally, she looked up. "His name is David Chen. He works with me at the firm." The words hit me like a physical blow, but I kept my face neutral. Years of dealing with difficult clients had taught me to hide my emotions when necessary. "How long?" 3 months. 3 months. While I'd been working overtime to pay for her new car, while I'd been planning a surprise weekend getaway for our anniversary, she'd been with someone else. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she continued, tears starting to flow. "It just did. He understands my ambitions, my dreams. He makes me feel special," I finished. "Important. Things I apparently don't do." "That's not what I meant, but it's what you feel." She nodded, and something inside me shifted. Not broke, that would come later, but shifted, like a foundation settling into a new position. "So what now?" I asked. "Divorce?" "I don't know. Maybe we could try counseling? Maybe if you could understand what I need?" "What you need is someone who isn't me." Amanda started to protest, but I held up my hand. "It's okay, I get it. I'm not enough for the new you." I stood up, suddenly exhausted. "I'm going to bed. We'll figure out the details tomorrow." As I headed upstairs, I heard her call my name, but I didn't turn around. In our bedroom, my bedroom now, I supposed, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall. 15 years. Half my adult life spent building something that she could throw away in 3 months. I thought about David Chen, tried to picture him, probably drove a nice car, wore expensive suits, never had grease under his fingernails. I should have felt angry, should have felt heartbroken. Instead, I felt something else entirely. Something cold and calculating. Something that whispered, "If she wants to play games, let's play games." But first, I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with. The next morning, Amanda was gone before I woke up. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter. "Gone to work early. We'll talk tonight." I crumpled the note and tossed it in the trash. Then I made coffee and sat down to think. In my line of work, you learn to approach problems systematically. First, you assess the damage. Then you figure out what tools you need. Finally, you fix what can be fixed and replace what can't. My marriage was definitely in the can't-be-fixed category. I called my biggest client and told them I'd need a few days to handle a family emergency. Not exactly a lie. Then I drove to the Rusty Anchor, the bar where contractors and blue-collar workers gathered to complain about everything from the weather to their wives. "Little early, even for you," said Pete, the bartender, as I slid onto a stool. "Special occasion," I said. "Coffee, not beer, and information." Pete raised an eyebrow but poured the coffee. The Anchor was more than a bar. It was the town's unofficial information exchange. Pete heard everything, remembered most of it, and shared what he thought you needed to know. "You heard anything about Amanda's new job?" I asked. "Heard she got promoted. Big fancy architecture firm downtown. Good for her." "Yeah, real good. You know anything about her coworkers?" Pete's expression shifted. He'd been tending bar for 20 years and could read people like road signs. "Jake, you sure you want to go down this road?" "I'm already on it. Just need to know where it leads." He sighed and leaned closer. "There's talk. Nothing definite, but talk. About her and some guy from work. Fancy car, expensive suits. Been seen around town." "Seen where?" "Lakeside Motel, mostly. Tuesdays and Thursdays, regular as clockwork." Today was Thursday. I finished my coffee and left a 10 on the bar. "Thanks, Pete." "Jake," he called as I reached the door. "Whatever you're thinking, just remember, revenge has a way of eating the person serving it." I nodded, but didn't stop walking. The Lakeside Motel was exactly what it sounded like. A rundown collection of rooms overlooking the town's murky lake. It catered to truckers, cheating spouses, and people who paid in cash and didn't want questions asked. I parked across the street and waited. At 12:30, a silver BMW pulled into the lot. The driver was tall, well-dressed, and moved with the confidence of a man who'd never had to fix his own roof in a thunderstorm. David Chen. 5 minutes later, Amanda's Honda arrived. I watched my wife of 15 years walk across the parking lot and into room 7, where her lover was waiting. I sat there for an hour, engine off, windows down, listening to the sounds of the lake lapping against the shore. I should have felt something: anger, sadness, betrayal. Instead, I felt strangely calm, like a problem had been identified and now I could start working on the solution. When they finally emerged, I was ready with my phone's camera. Not for divorce proceedings, I wasn't planning to hire a lawyer, but information was power, and I had a feeling I'd need all the power I could get. That evening, Amanda came home with takeout Chinese food and a guilty expression. "I thought we could have dinner and talk," she said, unpacking containers on the kitchen table. "Sure," I said, sitting down across from her. "How was work?" "Busy, really busy. I had to work through lunch." I nodded, taking a bite of sweet and sour pork. "That's too bad. You should take better care of yourself." She looked at me suspiciously, probably wondering why I wasn't yelling or demanding explanations. Truth was, I was done with explanations. I was moving into the planning phase. "Jake, about last night." "It's okay," I said. "I understand." "You do?" "Sure. You want something different, something better. I get it." Amanda relaxed slightly. "I'm glad you're being reasonable about this." "I'm always reasonable. It's one of my best qualities." After dinner, she went upstairs to take a bath. I cleaned up the dishes and then sat down at my laptop to do some research. David Chen wasn't hard to find. He had profiles on every social media platform, all showcasing his success and sophistication. He owned Chen Luxury Motors, a high-end used car dealership that specialized in vintage and exotic vehicles. His personal car was a restored 1969 Camaro SS that he'd apparently spent 3 years rebuilding. He lived in a condo downtown, worked out at an expensive gym, and ate at restaurants where appetizers cost more than I spent on groceries in a week. I also found something interesting: several negative reviews from customers who claimed he'd sold them cars with hidden problems, then refused to make repairs. Apparently, David Chen's success was built on a foundation that wasn't entirely solid. That gave me an idea. Over the next week, I played the role of the understanding husband. I was supportive when Amanda worked late, sympathetic when she seemed stressed, and completely oblivious when she made excuses to leave the house on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. Meanwhile, I was busy. First, I visited Chen Luxury Motors, posing as a potential customer interested in a vintage Mustang. David Chen was exactly what I'd expected: smooth, confident, and completely dismissive of anyone who looked like they worked with their hands. "This particular vehicle requires someone who understands its value," he said, running his hand along the car's hood. "It's not for everyone." "I understand," I said, playing the part of an impressed blue-collar worker. "What kind of warranty do you offer?" We provide a 30-day guarantee on all major systems, he lied smoothly. I'd done my research. His warranty was worthless, full of loopholes and exclusions. That sounds great. Let me think about it. As I left, I made note of the security system, the layout of the lot, and the location of David's precious Camaro. Information gathering, just like any other job. Next, I paid a visit to my old friend Tommy Rodriguez, who ran a small computer repair shop downtown. Tommy owed me several favors. I'd rewired his entire shop for free when he was starting out. I need to learn about online reviews, I told him. How they work, how they spread, that kind of thing. Tommy raised an eyebrow. You thinking about expanding into the digital age? Something like that. He spent an hour showing me how review sites worked, how to create accounts, and how negative reviews could spread across multiple platforms. By the time I left, I had a clear understanding of how to damage someone's online reputation. The third step was the most important. I needed allies. I started with Pete at the Rusty Anchor. Not directly. Pete was too smart for that. Instead, I began dropping casual comments about fancy car dealers who ripped off working people, about how some folks thought they were better than everyone else just because they wore expensive suits. You know what gets me, I said one afternoon, nursing a beer after a long day of installing kitchen cabinets. These guys who prey on honest people, sell them junk, and then disappear when problems start. You talking about anyone in particular? Pete asked. Just in general. But I heard Chen Luxury Motors has some unhappy customers. Might want to warn folks to be careful. Pete nodded thoughtfully. Word would spread. In a town like ours, reputation was everything. I also reached out to some of Chen's previous customers, the ones who'd left negative reviews, a few phone calls, some sympathetic listening, and suddenly I had a network of people who were very interested in seeing David Chen get what was coming to him. But the most important piece of the puzzle was Amanda herself. I've been thinking about what you said, I told her one evening, about wanting more from life. She looked up from her laptop, surprised. Really? Yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe I have been holding you back. Jake, I didn't mean... No, it's okay. I want you to be happy. If that means we go our separate ways, then that's what we do. Amanda's expression was hard to read. Relief, disappointment, guilt, maybe all three. I appreciate you saying that, she said finally. There's just one thing I need to know. This guy you're seeing, David, does he know about us? About our marriage? She shifted uncomfortably. We've talked about it. And what does he say? He says he's willing to wait until I figure things out. I nodded as if this made perfect sense. He sounds patient. He is. What Amanda didn't know was that David Chen had a very different story. Thanks to some careful eavesdropping at the Rusty Anchor, where David occasionally came to slum with the locals, I'd learned that he described Amanda as his practice wife, someone to have fun with while he looked for someone more suitable to his social status. The man was playing my wife, and she had no idea. That night, after Amanda fell asleep, I sat at the kitchen table and made my final plans. I wasn't interested in winning her back. That ship had sailed, but I wasn't going to let them both walk away unscathed while I picked up the pieces of my life. They wanted to play games? Fine. But they were about to learn that sometimes the quiet guy in the corner knows a few games of his own. I started small. On Monday morning, I created my first fake review account and posted a detailed complaint about Chen Luxury Motors. Nothing libelous, just a factual account of their warranty practices, based on actual customer experiences I documented. By Wednesday, 3 more reviews had appeared from real customers who'd been inspired to share their own stories. By Friday, David's 5-star rating had dropped to 3.5 stars. Meanwhile, I was playing the perfect understanding husband. When Amanda said she had to work late, I offered to pick up dinner. When she mentioned a work conference that weekend, I suggested she take some time to relax and think about what she wanted. You're being very mature about this, she said on Thursday evening, getting ready for another work meeting. I love you, I said, and meant it. I want what's best for you, even if that's not me. She kissed my cheek before leaving, and I watched through the window as she drove toward the Lakeside Motel. Then I got in my truck and drove to Chen Luxury Motors. The lot was closed, but I wasn't there to buy a car. I was there to leave a little present for David. His Camaro was parked in its usual spot, gleaming under the security lights. I'd spent hours researching the car online, learning about its engine, its restoration, and most importantly, its weaknesses. I didn't damage anything. That would have been too obvious. Instead, I carefully loosened the battery terminals just enough to cause intermittent electrical problems. Then I removed the valve caps from all 4 tires and let out just enough air to make them look slightly low. Nothing dramatic, Nothing that couldn't be explained by normal wear and tear, but enough to make David's weekend a little more frustrating. I was back home before Amanda returned from her meeting. The next morning, I was drinking coffee and reading the paper when my phone rang. "Jake, it's Tommy. You asked me to keep an ear out for interesting gossip. What have you got?" "Word is, David Chen's car broke down yesterday. Had to get it towed. He was pretty upset about it. Made a scene at Murphy's garage, claiming someone sabotaged his car." "That's terrible," I said, not bothering to hide my smile. "Probably just old car problems." "Probably. But here's the interesting part. Murphy says the guy was ranting about enemies and revenge. Seems pretty paranoid for a car dealer." "Paranoid people make mistakes," I said. "They sure do." That afternoon, Amanda came home looking troubled. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Just work stuff. David's been having some problems with his business. Online reviews, car trouble. He thinks someone's targeting him." "That's awful. Any idea who?" "He thinks it might be a competitor, or maybe an unhappy customer." I nodded sympathetically. "Well, I'm sure it'll blow over. These things usually do." But I wasn't planning to let it blow over. I was just getting started. That weekend, while Amanda was at her conference, I paid visits to 3 more of David's former customers. Not to encourage them to do anything, just to listen to their complaints and maybe mention that online reviews were a good way to warn other people about bad businesses. I also stopped by the Rusty Anchor, where the regulars were discussing David's recent paranoid behavior at Murphy's garage. "Guy comes in here sometimes," said Bill Murphy, the garage owner. "Acts like he owns the place. About time someone knocked him down a peg." "Sounds like he's doing it to himself," I observed. "Paranoid people usually are their own worst enemies." By Monday morning, Chen Luxury Motors had dropped to a 2.5-star rating. David had responded to several reviews with angry, defensive comments that only made him look worse. More importantly, word was spreading through town about his attitude and business practices. In a small community, reputation was everything, and David's was starting to crumble. But I was far from finished. The beauty of a small town is that everyone talks to everyone else. By Tuesday, half the town knew that David Chen was having problems, and the other half was hearing about it. I made sure the story spread in the right direction. "Heard that fancy car dealer is in some trouble," I mentioned to Mrs. Patterson, the town's unofficial gossip coordinator, while fixing her kitchen sink. "Oh yes, terrible business," she said, clearly delighted to have fresh information to share. "Apparently he's been cheating customers for years. It's all coming out now." "That's too bad. I was thinking about buying a car from him." "Oh, you don't want to do that, dear. I heard he sold the Henderson boy a lemon and then refused to fix it. Poor family lost their savings." The Henderson story was true. I'd verified it myself. But Mrs. Patterson's version was much more dramatic than the reality, and I knew she'd share her embellished version with everyone she met. Meanwhile, Amanda was getting more stressed by the day. "David's really struggling," she told me Wednesday evening. "His business is falling apart, and he doesn't understand why." "Maybe it's just bad luck," I suggested. "He thinks someone's deliberately sabotaging him. He's talking about hiring a private investigator." That was interesting, and potentially problematic. "Sounds expensive," I said. "Can he afford that with his business troubles?" Amanda's expression suggested he couldn't. Thursday afternoon, while Amanda was at the motel, I made my next move. I drove to Chen Luxury Motors and walked onto the lot like any other customer. David was there, looking haggard and stressed. His usual smooth confidence had been replaced by nervous energy. "Can I help you?" he asked, though his tone suggested he'd rather I left. "I'm interested in that Mustang," I said, pointing to the same car I'd looked at weeks earlier. "Right, the Mustang." He seemed to be having trouble focusing. "It's a great car, very reliable." "I read some reviews online," I said casually. "Seems like you've had some unhappy customers lately." His face darkened. "Those reviews are fake. Someone's trying to destroy my business." "That's terrible. Any idea who?" "I have my suspicions." I nodded sympathetically while mentally noting his paranoid tone. "Well, I'm sure you'll figure it out. About the Mustang. Can I take it for a test drive?" 20 minutes later, I was driving the Mustang around town, with David in the passenger seat growing more agitated by the minute. "The steering feels loose," I commented as we turned onto Main Street. "It's fine," he snapped. "The car's in perfect condition." "If you say so. How's the warranty on this one?" 30 days, full coverage." "That's not what your website says." David went quiet, and I could feel him staring at me. When I glanced over, his eyes were narrow and suspicious. "Who are you?" he asked. "Just a guy looking for a car." "No, you're not. You're asking too many questions." I pulled back into the lot and parked. Sorry if I seemed pushy. I like to be thorough when I'm spending this kind of money. I think you should leave. Sure thing. I'll think about the Mustang and get back to you. As I walked away, I could feel him watching me. Good. Paranoid people made mistakes, and I was counting on David to make a big one. That evening, Amanda was quiet during dinner. Everything okay? I asked. David thinks someone's been asking questions about him, potential customers who seem more interested in his problems than his cars. Sounds like he's pretty stressed. He is. He's talking about confronting people, maybe getting aggressive with anyone he thinks is involved. I nodded thoughtfully. That doesn't sound smart. If he's already having reputation problems, getting aggressive with customers will only make things worse. That's what I told him, but he's not listening. Perfect. An unstable David was exactly what I needed for the next phase of my plan. Maybe he should take a vacation, I suggested. Get away from all the stress. He can't afford to leave right now. He's barely keeping the business afloat. That's too bad. Sometimes when everything's falling apart, the best thing to do is step back and let things settle. But I wasn't planning to let things settle. I was planning to make them much, much worse. Friday morning brought rain and the perfect opportunity for my next move. I'd been monitoring David's routine for weeks, and I knew he always left for lunch at exactly noon, usually heading to an expensive restaurant downtown where he could pretend his world wasn't falling apart. At 11:45, I was parked across from Chen Luxury Motors, watching through the rain-streaked windshield. Right on schedule, David emerged from his office, locked up, and drove away in his Camaro. I waited 5 minutes, then crossed the street. The plan was simple but effective. I wasn't going to vandalize anything. That would be too obvious and potentially criminal. Instead, I was going to help David's paranoia reach its logical conclusion. Using skills I'd developed over years of troubleshooting electrical problems, I carefully adjusted the security system's sensitivity settings. Not enough to set off false alarms constantly, but enough to make it trigger whenever a large truck drove by or the wind picked up. I also left a small gift, a note tucked under the windshield wiper of the Mustang I'd test-driven. It read, "Stop ripping people off, or things will get worse." The note wasn't signed, and I'd worn gloves while writing it. Let David's imagination fill in the blanks. By the time I got home, Amanda was already there, looking upset. "David's security alarm has been going off all afternoon," she said. "He thinks someone broke in, but nothing's missing." "That's strange. Maybe it's malfunctioning?" He found a threatening note on one of his cars. I frowned with concern. "Did he call the police?" "They came out and looked around, but there's no evidence of any real crime. They told him to get his security system checked." "Sounds like good advice." Amanda studied my face. "Jake, you've been very calm about all this. About us, I mean. What do you want me to do? Scream and throw things? I don't know. Most men would be angrier." "I'm not most men." That was certainly true. Most men wouldn't have spent 3 weeks systematically destroying their wife's lover's reputation and business. Most men wouldn't have turned psychological warfare into an art form. "David thinks you might be involved," Amanda said quietly. "Me?" I laughed. "What would I know about car dealerships and online reviews? I'm just a handyman." That's what I told him. Smart woman. That weekend, Amanda spent most of her time on the phone with David, trying to calm him down as his situation continued to deteriorate. The security system was triggering multiple times per day. More negative reviews were appearing online. Customers were canceling appointments. By Sunday evening, she looked exhausted. "He wants to meet with you," she said over dinner. "Meet with me? Why?" "He thinks if you two could talk, maybe work things out like civilized people, it might help everyone move forward." I considered this. Where does he want to meet? Somewhere neutral, maybe the Rusty Anchor? The idea of David Chen trying to assert dominance in a blue-collar bar was too amusing to pass up. "Sure," I said. "When?" "Tomorrow night, 8 o'clock. "I'll be there." Amanda looked relieved. "Thank you, Jake. I know this is awkward, but maybe if you two could just talk." "Maybe," I agreed. But I wasn't planning to talk. I was planning to finish what I'd started. Monday evening, I arrived at the Rusty Anchor 15 minutes early. Pete was behind the bar, and the usual crowd of contractors and factory workers occupied their regular stools. "Expecting company?" Pete asked, noting my unusually neat appearance. "Yeah, Amanda's boyfriend wants to have a chat." Pete raised an eyebrow. "That should be interesting." David arrived exactly on time, looking out of place in his expensive suit and nervous energy. The conversation at the bar died as he walked in, and I could feel everyone watching. "Jake," he said, sliding into the booth across from me. "David." He ordered a whiskey, probably to fit in, and got straight to the point. I know you're behind what's been happening to me. What's been happening to you? The reviews, the security problems, the note, all of it. I sipped my beer calmly. That's a serious accusation. You have any proof? I don't need proof. I know. Knowing and proving are different things. David leaned forward, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. I want it to stop, now. I want a lot of things too, I said. I want my wife to remember the vows she made. I want 15 years of my life back. I want to not feel like an idiot for trusting someone I loved. This isn't about Amanda. Everything's about Amanda. The bar had gone completely quiet. Even the jukebox seemed to be holding its breath. Look, David said, trying a different approach. I understand you're upset, but destroying my business won't bring her back. You're right, I said. Nothing will bring her back, but that doesn't mean I have to make things easy for you. What do you want? I want you to leave town. David laughed, but there was no humor in it. That's not happening. Then I guess your problems will continue. You can't prove I did anything to your business, I continued, because I haven't done anything illegal. But you know what's funny about small towns? Once people start talking, they don't stop. And right now, everyone's talking about Chen Luxury Motors. David's face was turning red. You think you're clever? I think I'm thorough. He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. This isn't over. Yes, it is, I said calmly. You just don't know it yet. After he left, the bar slowly returned to normal conversation. Pete brought me another beer without being asked. That went well, he said dryly. Better than I expected. What happens now? Now we wait and see how he handles pressure. I didn't have to wait long. Tuesday morning, Amanda was gone when I woke up. She'd left another note. Staying at Jennifer's for a few days. Need to think. Jennifer was Amanda's sister, a lawyer who'd never liked me and had probably been encouraging the affair from the beginning. Fine, let them plot together. It wouldn't change anything. I was finishing my coffee when my phone rang. Jake, you need to get down here. It was Tommy, and he sounded excited. Chen's having a complete meltdown at his dealership. Police are on the way. I drove to Chen Luxury Motors and found a crowd gathered across the street. David was in his lot, screaming at anyone who would listen, waving what looked like a baseball bat. Someone's been sabotaging me, he shouted at the approaching police officers. I know who it is, and I'm going to stop them. This was even better than I'd hoped. The police managed to calm him down and get him to put away the bat. But the damage was done. A dozen people had witnessed his breakdown, and cell phone videos were already making their way around town. By evening, everyone was talking about David Chen's public meltdown. His remaining customers were canceling their appointments. His online reputation was completely destroyed, and Amanda was finally starting to see the man she'd been having an affair with for what he really was. She called me that night. Did you hear what happened? She asked. Hard to miss. It's all over town. Jake, I think I made a terrible mistake. Which mistake would that be? David isn't who I thought he was. When things got difficult, he just fell apart. People show their true colors under pressure. I want to come home. I want to try to work things out. I was quiet for a long moment, looking around the house I'd spent years fixing up, thinking about the life I'd built that she'd been so eager to throw away. No, I said finally. What? I said no. You made your choice, Amanda. You chose him over me, over us. The fact that he turned out to be a disappointment doesn't change that. But Jake, I love you. I made a mistake, but we can fix this. Some things can't be fixed. Some things can only be replaced. Please don't do this. We can go to counseling. We can... Amanda, I interrupted. Do you remember what you said to me that night in the storm? You said you were tired of living like broke college students. You said everyone at your firm was moving up while you were stuck with a handyman. I didn't mean it like that. Yes, you did, and you were right. You deserve someone who matches your ambitions, your social status, your dreams of the good life. You're that person. No, I'm not. I'm a guy who fixes things for a living. I'm proud of that. But it's not enough for you. It never was. I could hear her crying, and part of me wanted to give in. But the larger part, the part that had spent 3 weeks methodically destroying her lover's life, knew that some bridges couldn't be rebuilt. I'm filing for divorce, I said. You can have the house. I'll find something else. Jake, please. Goodbye, Amanda. I hung up and turned off my phone. Wednesday morning, I drove to Chen Luxury Motors one last time. The lot was empty except for David's Camaro. A for sale sign had been hastily posted in the window. David emerged from the office as I parked. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Come to gloat?" he asked. "Come to make you an offer." "I'm not interested in anything you have to say." "I want to buy your Camaro." He stared at me. "What?" "Your car. I'll pay cash, fair market value." "Why would you want my car?" "Because it's a beautiful machine, and you don't deserve it." David's laugh was bitter. "You really think you've won, don't you?" "I think I've evened the score. Amanda wants to go back to you." "I know. And?" "And I told her no." That surprised him. "Why?" "Because I don't want damaged goods." The insult hit home. David's hands clenched into fists, but he was smart enough not to try anything physical, not after his public breakdown. "So what now?" he asked. "Now you leave town, start over somewhere else, and try to be a better person. And if I don't? Then your problems continue, forever." David studied my face for a long moment. Whatever he saw there convinced him I wasn't bluffing. "The car's worth $30,000, he said. "I'll give you 20. "That's robbery." "That's business. Take it or leave it." 5 minutes later, I was the owner of a 1969 Camaro SS. David took my check, handed over the keys, and walked away without another word. I sat in the driver's seat, feeling the power of the engine, and smiled. It was a beautiful car. But more than that, it was a symbol of everything David Chen had thought made him better than me. Now it was mine. That afternoon, I drove the Camaro to the Rusty Anchor. Pete whistled appreciatively as I parked. "Nice ride," he said. "Where'd you get it?" "Bought it from a guy who was leaving town." "Good deal?" "The best." I ordered a beer and sat at the bar, listening to the familiar sounds of my neighbors talking about their lives, their problems, their small victories and defeats. These were my people. This was my place. Amanda called twice that evening, but I didn't answer. She'd made her choice when she decided I wasn't enough for her new life. The fact that her new life had fallen apart didn't change anything. Some things could be fixed, some things could be replaced, and some things were better left broken. I finished my beer, got in my new car, and drove home through the quiet streets of my small town. Tomorrow, I'd start looking for a new place to live, maybe start dating again eventually. But tonight, I was content to sit in my kitchen, listening to the rain on the roof I'd patched myself, knowing that sometimes the quiet guy in the corner wins after all.